Your monthly subscription box from postflybox.com includes all the materials needed to tie a dozen flies, along with some extra goodies. Few patterns are as effective as the conehead woolly bugger. This kit includes all the materials needed to tie both brown and black buggers. Here, we're going to tie one in brown. Begin by inserting the point of one of the hooks into the hole at the narrow end of a conehead. Then, slip the conehead around the hook bend and up to the eye. Next, get the assembly firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Solder wire is used to add weight to the fly and help stabilize the cone. Pick up the whole coil and start wrapping one end of the wire at about the hook bend. Take 8 to 10 touching wraps going forward, then helicopter the wire to break it off close. Twist the remaining tail around the hook shank until it rests with the other wraps, and then push everything firmly up into the cone. This should help hold the cone in place and keep it centered on the hook shank. For this brown bugger, we're going to use brown thread. Load the spool onto a bobbin and start taking thread wraps immediately behind the weight. Take wraps until the thread is secured, then snip off the tag. The tail of the fly is formed using a single brown marabou feather. Strip away any of the lower short or off-colored fibers from the stem. Wetting the feather with either water or saliva will really help to keep it under control during tie-in. Measure to form a tail a full hook in length, then transfer that measurement rearward to the start of the bend. Use nice tight wraps of tying thread to firmly anchor the marabou to the top of the hook shank. Continue taking wraps all the way back to the start of the bend. You can then lift the butt end of the feather up and use your tying scissors to snip the excess off close. Just a small amount of pearl crystal flash is used to add some shimmer to the fly. Cut 2 strands free from the hank and locate their midpoint. Take a few wraps forward with your tying thread, then lay the midpoint of the crystal flash against the near side of the hook and take thread wraps to secure it. Push 2 of the strands to the far side of the hook as you take thread wraps rearward. Then, pull the 2 remaining strands on the near side of the hook back and anchor them as well. The idea is to get equal amounts of crystal flash on either side of the fly. You can then snip the strands off so they're about the same length as the marabou tail. Medium-sized copper wire is used to rib and reinforce the fly. Use the inner part of your scissors to snip a 7-inch length free from the spool. Lay the wire segment against the near side of the hook so one end rests up against the back edge of the weight. Take wraps of tying thread to secure the wire in this position. Make sure to bind it down all the way to the start of the hook bend. End with your tying thread right up at the back edge of the conehead. Snip a 7-inch length of brown chenille free from the hank. Use wraps of tying thread to anchor one end of the chenille to the top of the hook shank and go rearward to the base of the tail. Then, use open spiral wraps to advance your thread forward once again to the back edge of the cone. Get hold of the chenille and begin making touching wraps with it up the hook shank to form the body of the fly. It should be smooth and even and get slightly thicker as it's wrapped over top of the weight. When you reach your tying thread, use it to anchor the chenille, then snip the excess off close. Select a single brown hackle feather and with the shiny side facing you, strip away the fibers from the lower, thicker part of the stem, which can be very difficult to wrap. With the shiny side still facing you, lay the feather against the near side of the hook like so, and take a few good firm thread wraps to secure it. Use the tips of your tying scissors to snip the excess stem off close, and if you need to, use your thumbnail to bury what remains below the edge of the cone. Take more firm wraps of tying thread to make sure the stem won't pull free. Get hold of the feather and take 2 touching wraps with it right behind the cone. Then begin angling the feather rearward into evenly spaced open spiral wraps around the body of the fly. Continue taking wraps all the way to the base of the tail. Then get hold of the wire and start making open spiral wraps through the hackle fibers and up the hook shank. These wraps will not only segment the fly, but help to reinforce the brittle hackle stem. When you reach the back edge of the cone, use your tying thread to anchor the wire. You can then either break or snip the excess hackle tip at the rear of the fly off close. Snip or helicopter the excess wire to break it off right down by the cone. Then use your fingernail and additional wraps of tying thread to bury the exposed wire end. Follow this with a couple of 4 or 5 turn whip finishes to ensure nothing comes unraveled. You can then snip your tying thread free. Although not essential, a drop of head cement applied to the thread wraps and allowed to sink in behind the cone head will further help with fly durability. Don't worry about the wet, matted marabou tail. Once the feather dries, it'll fluff out nicely. You can never have enough conehead woolly buggers.